Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Adam Olson with the Football and Other Things podcast. All right, so we're going to get into it. It is almost March Madness. March Madness is upon us. The last conference games are being played, and I'm talking about basketball, okay? But it is relevant because what I am going to do is I am going to introduce the first round of the Premier Conference Championship. Okay, the tournament, the 72-team tournament that I've been talking about. Here's how I seeded it. I took a look at the last BCS standings before the bowls were actually played. And so that was my 1 through 25 seeds. And then what I did was I went through and I looked at various rankings, and then based on that and then my own knowledge and my own opinion, I seeded 1 through 72. Okay, and the way it's going to work, okay, are that the following teams, the following seeds have been given, okay? And looking at this, seeds 57 through 72, those teams are going to be playing a, quote, play-in game. Technically, it's the first round, but really what they're doing is they're playing to play into the first round, okay? And the 1 through 56 seeds, those are actually going to be the teams that play in the first round, okay? All right. So, like, for example, Georgia Tech and Colorado are going to be in a play-in game, and the winner of that game will have the distinct pleasure of playing against Georgia. Yikes. All right. So this is the listing of my seeding. Hate it, love it, cool. Either way, email me, footballandotherthings1@gmail.com, and let me know what you think about that, because I would love to hear what you think about that. I want to hear if you go, Adam, those are garbage seedings, or if you go, Adam, those are pretty good. Debate me either way. At me, dog. I'm here. All right. Okay. So here is a look at the seedings. All right. And then the average seeding. And so what this determined, okay, was if we went through it all based on the season that was just played. Again, these are seedings that I took based on teams' records before the bowl season started, based on their records before the bowl. So I didn't like the results of what happened to these teams in the national championship game and all the bowls is not factored into it, okay? Because I'm going off of this is what these teams did during the regular season, okay? And you got to remember, the way that I have it right now, there are no conference championship games, okay? You can have a conference champion, but there's no conference championship games. So if 2 or more teams finish with a tie, okay, then they can be co-champions for the regular season. That's fine. They're not going to have a conference tournament, all right? But they're going to have a national tournament, and they will be seeded, okay? Now, let's real quick take a look at these first round matchups. All right. So you'll notice there's a couple of colored games here. All right. So take a look. All right. So we got, for example, all right. And I misspoke on the last one. Georgia would play the winner of Nebraska, Boston College. You can see right up here. I said Georgia would play the winner of Georgia Tech and Colorado. My fault. But anyway, so Ohio State during the regular season did play Indiana, and they beat them. Clemson during the regular season did play Miami, and they beat them. Oregon State did not play Florida during the regular season. They actually played them during the bowl season. So for the purposes of this exercise, technically that game was not played. However, as viewers, we saw the game because it was their bowl game, okay? And we already know what the outcome was. Now, here's why it's really important to talk about Oregon State versus Florida, okay? How many opt-outs did all of these teams have, okay? I'm not talking about injuries. Injuries are injuries. But players that are injured, if they had a future in the NFL, how many of those injuries actually prevented those players from playing in the game versus them going, I might be able to play it, but I really just want to start getting healthy and training for the combine. And so it was like a medical opt-out as opposed to simply, I'm healthy, but I don't want to risk it and I'm going to opt out. Okay. Either way, it's an opt-out, but one is a little bit more understandable than the other. So the reason why that's important is Florida had a bunch of opt-outs, okay, including Anthony Richardson. Now, Florida finished their season 6-6, and then they ended up losing, just getting destroyed in their bowl game by Oregon State. But how many guys for Oregon State opted out, and how many guys for Florida opted out? And if all the guys that could have played for Florida played for Florida, would that game have been different? I would like to think maybe Oregon State still would have won, but the score probably would have been a lot closer. So that's my point. If you want to talk about the relevance of the regular season and then how it transitions into the postseason, think about how many people who opted out of their team's bowl game. Think about how many of those teams would have stayed in. There were no opt-outs, 0 opt-outs of the 4 playoff teams. 0 opt-outs. 0 guys on Georgia, TCU, Michigan, and Ohio State said, hey, I have a chance to be a high draft pick. I'm opting out. All those guys played. All of them played. How about this? Alabama, who was not in the college football playoff, which is a rarity for Alabama, their 2 best players, Will Anderson and Bryce Young, both played in that game. Now, I think that's a tribute to those guys. I think it's a tribute to the culture at Alabama. And I think it's a tribute to Nick Saban, okay? But think about if we had this 72-team tournament, the level of opt-outs that we would get as opposed to we're going and we're playing in the whatever bowl, okay? You notice the playoff teams had no opt-outs. I'll also be interested to see how many opt-outs the teams, once they make the 12-team playoff, starting in the fall of 2024, how many of those teams have opt-outs? I'll bet you it'll be less. I'm not hating on people that opt out. Everyone's got their reason, and that's fine. I think we can all reference back to when Jalen Smith, who was projected to be a very high draft pick out of Notre Dame, decided to play in the bowl game versus Ohio State, and he blew his knee out, and how tragic that was. Or a guy like Marshawn Lattimore, the running back from South Carolina, when he had that gruesome injury, okay? Those are some examples of guys that, had they opted out, wouldn't have gotten hurt. And those guys had bright NFL futures, especially Jalen Smith, who still got drafted, but obviously his draft stock fell because of that injury, okay? So think about how many of the teams now that think they can actually win this tournament are going to decrease their opt-outs. That's a big deal. All right, so let's look right out the gate at this tournament, okay? So Nebraska is going to play Boston College, and then the winner of that has the distinct privilege of playing Georgia in the first round. Now, you can tell me, based on everything you saw, hey, Adam, Boston College wasn't very good. Neither was Nebraska. Oh, I know they weren't very good. I wonder what would have happened if a team like Nebraska, who wanted and gave Scott Frost every opportunity, all right, to win. I wonder what a tournament would do to a coaching staff like that, where they go, hey, you know what? Let's just see how he does in the tournament. Let's let this guy finish out the season. Let's let him see how he does in the tournament. And then we got a chance. So a coaching staff that's like maybe called a lame duck coaching staff, because like they know their head coach has already been fired in the season, or they know they're going to get fired at the end of the year. But now the administrators at that school are more apt to say, you know what, we still got the tournament at the end of the season. Let's see if these guys can get hot and make a run. Let's see, and then if they don't, okay, move on. Also, think about how that would affect the hiring cycle of coaches, if that would slow it down a little bit more. I know that a lot of that has to do with like the early signing day and recruiting, and some definitely needs to be done about that. I'm not sure what yet. My idea is either let kids sign super early, like in July, or eliminate it and go back to February or maybe even March. You got to give these coaches a break, though, okay? And the early recruiting, the early signing day is killing coaching staffs. It's literally killing those guys, man. Like those guys already work their tails off, and now they got to work even more. Okay, so here's the play-in games. Nebraska, Boston College. Then we got Iowa State versus Virginia. Arizona State versus Virginia Tech, East Carolina University versus Indiana, West Virginia versus Stanford, Arizona versus Northwestern, Miami versus Vanderbilt, and Georgia Tech versus Colorado. Look, I would love to see those games. That in my mind, those are the bottom 16 teams in the premier conferences that I created. Those are the bottom 16. There's still games. There's still games. I would love to watch them. I would love it, man. I would love to see teams that are probably on a pretty even footing as far as talent and are concerned, to see what those teams do, because they're going to be fighting for their lives with the threat of being relegated down into the Champions Leagues. Okay, so this is good. Now, the winners of all those games would then be pitted against the top 8 seeds. Okay, and so, you're probably not going to get any of the winners of those games beating the top 8 seeds. That is highly, highly unlikely. Just like it was highly unlikely that a 16 seed beats the 1 seed in the NCAA basketball tournament. It's happened once. Doctor Strange. You remember Doctor Strange in Avengers Endgame? He holds up that, Tony Stark looks at him and he holds up that finger and he looks at him and his hair's blowing in some imaginary wind and he gives him the 1. This is your 1 in 14 million chance, Tony Stark. You got to take the Infinity Stones from Thanos, man. Your 1 chance. Here's your 1 chance, number 72 seed Colorado. You get a chance at redemption against Utah. Go get them. All you got to do is beat Georgia Tech first. All right. So then if you look at all the teams that don't have play-in games, okay, there's some really interesting matchups there. Liberty versus Maryland. That's a regionally relevant game. That's in the DMV area. And think about Hugh Freeze coaching in that game, okay, when he's still at Liberty against Mike Locksley. What a great looking game that would be. Think about the game right above it. Duke versus Kentucky. You got Mike Elko in his first season, leading Duke to a great season, and you got always dependable Mark Stoops. So you got 2 defensive-minded head coaches just going at it. Ooh, you might not see a touchdown get scored in that game, but that's okay. All right? Right above it, what a clash of styles, but things that you love, because Sam Hartman is still on this team, okay, going up against a just savage Iowa defense. Now, on the other side of it, you have a very mediocre Wake Forest defense against a absolutely abysmal Iowa offense. So what we would see is a great strength-on-strength game right there. That would be awesome. Next, Illinois versus BYU. Illinois, really, really good on D, decent on offense. BYU, decent on D, pretty good on O. So again, styles make fights, man. Minnesota, Texas Tech. Who would want to see a great game like that? Me, I would. PJ Fleck versus Joey McGuire? Come on, baby. Those guys might be so juiced up, you could actually put boxing gloves on them, and they could have a boxing match before the game. Next up, Ole Miss versus Syracuse. I mean, okay, so you got Dino Babers, all right, with Robert Anias as OC against Ole Miss. Ole Miss. And that would be an awesome game. Pitt versus UCF. Great clash of styles there. You have a bunch of NFL caliber players on defense for Pitt against a Gus Malzahn called offense at UCF with hopefully a healthy John Reese Plumlee. North Carolina versus Louisville. Who doesn't want to see something like that? With Phil Longo still calling the plays at North Carolina, okay? And Scott Satterfield at Louisville. So you got a great quarterback battle right there between Malik Cunningham and, boy, why am I forgetting the name of the North Carolina quarterback? Help me out. May? Last name May? Drake May? Yeah. Purdue versus Oklahoma State. Now, I know Oklahoma State has had a mass exodus in the transfer portal, including losing Spencer Sanders. But see, before Purdue loses a guy like Jeff Brom, and they get a guy and he gets to coach against Mike Gundy. You guys see, I could name off every single one of these games, and they're intriguing. And very few, if any, of these games were already played in the regular season. That's awesome. You have regional relevance. You have regional rivalries. You have out-of-region rivalries. You have teams with storied traditions going at it. I mean, Notre Dame versus Oklahoma? What an awesome game. I'm telling you, this would be a great tournament. A great tournament. And at the end of it, Georgia probably still wins. But Georgia might get matched up against a team like an Ohio State who had every opportunity to beat them and could have beat them, just missed a field goal. And you never know, because what happened in the other semi? TCU had 2 pick sixes, and it was just enough for them to go ahead and beat Michigan and then get drugged by Georgia. Okay, but imagine if a Tennessee and an Alabama were in that playoff. You might say, well, Adam, a 12-team playoff, they would have made it. You're right. Look, let's just say we did a 12-team playoff this past season. These would have been the 12 teams that were in the playoff. Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee, Clemson, Utah, Kansas State, USC, Penn State, Washington. That would have been great too. I'm not arguing that. I'm happy with that. I think that's awesome. But the 72-team tournament is going to get us places that we just can't get with a 4 or even 12-team playoff. And I love it. And it's doable. It's doable. You're going to play it. Let's just say that somehow a team that played a play-in game makes it all the way to the national championship game. Okay? Let's just say that. All right? So what that means is they would play either 18 or 19 games at the most. It's highly unlikely that would happen, but that's at the most what they would play, 18 or 19 games. The NFL regular season is 17 games. If you play in a Texas high school football state championship, you've played 16 games. That's high school kids. It's manageable schedule-wise if you start the college football season 1 week early and you end it 2 weeks later. And you can play every week. You don't have to speed it up and play 2 games in a week or anything like that. You can even have 1 or 2 bye weeks, okay, depending. So you might say, okay, the regular season's over. All right, we're going to give everyone 1 bye week at the end of it, in addition to the bye week that you'll get somewhere during the regular season. Okay, so you get a mid-season bye week, or not necessarily mid-season, but in-season bye week, a postseason bye week, and then if you're one of the top 50, if you're one of the top 56 teams, you'll get 2 bye weeks at the end of the season, 2, to heal up and get healthy and everything like that. Guys, this is doable. This is doable. So I'm telling you right now, okay, this is something that is awesome. The 72-team tournament is a real thing. It could work. And it'd be great for college football. The first thing you got to do, though, is you got to split these teams up. You got to disperse the teams from the 2 conferences, and you need to create more regional relevance and regional matchups. And that actually, universities, school presidents, and athletic departments will like that because they're not going to feel the same strain of pressure in terms of like travel, okay? And now you can just simply play. You're not concerned about scheduling out for 10, 15 years in advance. You don't have to worry about that. The only thing you really got to worry about is if you're home or away. And really, the conferences would just take care of that. So it's doable. It's doable, and it won't diminish the regular season. It'll create more relevance in the regular season as well. I will die on this hill. At me, okay? At FBAOT1 on Twitter, okay? Email me. Football and other things 1@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook, Adam Olson. Last name is Olson. I'm on YouTube. All right. Football and Other Things podcast. I'm also on Spotify, and I'm on Apple Podcasts, and I'm on Stitcher. Check us out. I'm telling you, this is something that will work, folks. First round action coming at you. Let's get some interaction, and let's decide who would win these first round matchups. And let's go on to the second and third rounds, okay? All right. from the Olson Family Complex in Waxahachie, Texas. I'm Adam Olson with the Football and Other Things podcast. Mom, Dad, I love you. You did a great job.